Good afternoon, honourable members. This sitting is resumed.
Madam Deputy Speaker, government notices recommitted.
Madam
Honourable
Deputy
Member
Speaker,
for
I
St.
beg to
Joseph.
give notice of a resolution that the Honourable, the House of Assembly, concur in the amendments made by the Honourable, the Senate, to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill 2025.
Government business resumed.
Government's business is now resumed.
Order number 6, in the name of the Honourable Senior Minister, Minister of Planning and Development in the Prime Minister's Office, to move the passing of a resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228, to approve the compulsory acquisition by the state of the parcels of land situated at Trents in the parish of St. James in this island, and more particularly described in the schedules thereto for a public purpose, namely for the relocation of the Whole Town Civic Centre.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. This matter before this Honourable Chamber is an exceedingly important one. And it has many, many facets to it. As you heard, Madam Deputy Speaker, it involves the acquisition of 4 parcels of land situated at Trents in Whole Town, totaling 7.49 hectares, or 74,903 square meters. The purpose, as recited, is to be able to reposition the Whole Town Civic Centre from where it's currently located and instead place it on a new plot of land which is opposite to the Sir Frederick Smith School currently in that area. Now first, let me start, Madam Deputy Speaker, to talk a little bit about Whole Town. You would be well aware that Whole Town is the first town. Indeed, when the settlers first came to Barbados, it is exactly where they landed, and they called it Whole Town because of the inlet that they landed into. And I believe this year will signify 400 years since Barbados was first visited by those settlers. Obviously, I can't say that it is where it was discovered, because we are well aware that Amerindian people lived here before that. So it is when the Europeans came to this land and started at Whole Town. Whole Town is the location for one of our oldest churches. It is the location that a thriving community, both retail, tourism development, as well as heritage, has taken place throughout this country. Indeed, Whole Town has been recognized and has been shown within the physical development plan that has been passed within this Honourable Chamber as one of the community plans. And what's interesting to note, Madam Deputy Speaker, is in fact, in the community plan and the description of the community plan for Whole Town, that area is in fact included as an area, as part of the community plan to be developed as part of Whole Town itself. And as I can show the community plan here, Madam Deputy Speaker, essentially, if I can locate you, this area right here is the Trents playing field. Just adjacent to that is the school. And on the other side of the road are the 4 parcels of land. Those parcels were first zoned as what was called Zone 1. But when we rezoned the area it then came out of the restricted area of Zone 1 and went into what we call now Zone B, some areas Zone B. What Zone B does is it allows development to take place in that area. And what we have recognized is that given an opportunity for development to take place, these lands would then become available for development. What is also interesting about this, Madam Deputy Speaker, is where the Civic Center is now. It is a fairly dense and compact space. What does that mean? It is bounded by developments to the north, developments to the south, the highway, and the sea on the west. So there is no and has been no opportunity for further expansion of the Civic Center as it is currently now configured. So what we needed to look for is a new place that could take a new and improved Civic Center so that a better, new and improved police station could go there. A better, new and improved court facility can go there. A better, new and improved Barbados Revenue Authority, Barbados Licensing Authority, welfare, all of those things currently in that small space, in what's considered really a cramped space, would then be able to move over to this new area that has been designated in the community plan. That is the first thing, and this is very, very important. And what that does is that then gives opportunities for that whole area to be serviced by a better civic center. And as we anticipate that the expansion in that area, the whole St. James area, will need a greater use of a civic center. For instance, at Lancaster and all of the area around there, with the number of housing developments going up in that area, it means that you would have a great need for more of an expanded civic center. The hotel developments, Royalton, for instance, which has already started, again, it needs a new and improved civic center. So by understanding and recognizing that whole town continues to develop and develop in a rapid place, at a rapid pace, we recognize that we had to advance and improve the civic center. But more important than that, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I can make this a document of the House, although this is an expanded one, but it's actually part of the physical development plan, which is already a document. But more important than that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is this. Under the physical development plan at page 813, if members would care to look at it, you would see a representation of what is a 100-year floodline. Now, currently, where the Civic Center is now resides within the 100-year floodline. What does that mean? That means that should we get a 100-year flood, those facilities would be at risk. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, the new location that we have identified for acquisition now, that would then house the new Civic Center, does not lie in that 100-year floodline. And it is obviously the policy of this government to move our critical infrastructure out of flood-prone areas and into areas that would be protected. And this is one area that would not be impacted on the 100-year floodline. And I think that in addition to everything else, is critical to the development and by extension, the acquisition that we're now doing. Also, Madam Deputy Speaker, in addition to everything else, what we will give an opportunity in this area to do is to provide a parking facility. Now, as you know, at the current Civic Center, parking is exceedingly limited. Exceedingly limited. Parking in all of Whole Town is limited. You would recognize that at the Lime Grove facility now, they have a high-rise parking. And I don't know if you've ever tried to park in there, but it's always full. And what we recognized is we had to, in addition to everything else, provide a better parking facility there. And very shortly, you will see a request for proposals to be able to build a parking facility on this same land that we're acquiring. So this acquisition will not only facilitate a new and improved police station, a new and improved civic center on the whole, a new and improved court, a new and improved Barbados Revenue Authority, a new and improved Barbados Licensing Authority, a new and improved welfare facility, but it will also give an opportunity for a new and improved parking for all of Whole Town. And as Whole Town continues to develop, As we see Royalton going up with over 180 rooms, and that continues to develop at a rapid pace, you're going to need more parking as more economic activity comes to Old Town. Just earlier today, I was in discussions with another developer that wants to do another 200-room hotel just behind Lime Grove. Just behind Lime Grove. I'm told he has the financing, he has the land, but you know what? The only holdup, can't get construction workers. Cannot get a contractor at an appropriate price to be able to build the hotel that he wants to build. Has planning approval, has the land, has the financing, but needs the contractor. And this is what we're going to keep hitting all of the time. The member for St. Peter and I had a meeting with contractors, and that wasn't even before all of this building that is going on. And from then, people were saying and signaling that we have a great need to be able to fill the deficit in the labor force and the skills that we need to be able to build out Barbados in the way that we are moving. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is clear that Barbados is abuzz with building activity. You would recognize that even the Honourable Member spoke about the Central Bank Governor. Central Bank Governor reported that construction is up 7%. 7%. When last, Madam Deputy Speaker, could we think that there were 6 hotels building in Barbados simultaneously? Nobody can tell me. You know why? It's never happened. Never before. We could start in the north at Pendry, hotel going up there on what was the former Nikki Beach restaurant. Then we come a little further down to Royalton. Then we come here to Pier Head. In fact, before we even get there, we have Blue Monkey, which is the old Escape, which is obliquely opposite what was Coach House, adjacent to what was Coach House. Then we come to Pier Head. Then next to Pier Head is Hyatt. Then a little further down is Indigo. And then at some point, we're going to very shortly see another construction at Carlisle House. All through Barbados, we are seeing people, because you know why? People have confidence in this Barbados Little Party administration. People have confidence in Barbados, and people see an opportunity, and they're putting in their investments where necessary to benefit and capitalize on the stability and on the good governance of this country. And that's what this is about. And at the end of the day, Madam Deputy Speaker, you have to understand the only way you can get yourselves out of an economic problem is by growth. The last administration tried to print their money, print money to get out. Did not work. It was an exercise in futility. So clearly, what we have shown is the way to get it done is to get it done through growth. And I want to go further, Madam Deputy Speaker, to talk a little bit about what Whole Town itself will be doing, and then I'll go specifically to what will be happening at the location. So the plans for development of Whole Town to make it a regional center, not only supporting tourism, but also entertainment, services, and retail. So this will be done by completing the waterfront route, as you would see in the physical development plan, and protecting the water frontage of Whole Town. As you know, there was significant degradation of the beachfront in the passing of Beryl. And what we want to do now is to continue to enhance and improve the beach replenishment, and also to continue that protection of the boardwalk that is in the Whole Town area. That's the first thing that we need to do. We need, of course, to continue to protect the natural heritage and the marine environment in that area, especially in the Folkestone area, as well as making it a transportation hub. And what the opportunity for this civic facility will do is it gives us an opportunity to build out a transportation hub so that you can get interchanging for bus routes in this area as well. So this is part of a whole infrastructure plan that we have to develop this facility. Another benefit that often people don't appreciate that it will redound from this development as well, Madam Deputy Speaker. Over the years, the Member of Parliament for St. James North would tell you that Trents and the surrounding area of where the residences are tends to be a flood-prone area. And it is a flood-prone area because the water comes down from the hill, goes into that area, which is under sea level. When you tried, and I went on several occasions with him to try to relieve the flooding problems there. If you dig just 4 feet down, you hit water because there's a high water table in that area. What this development will do, and is mandated to do, is to be able to capture that water that comes down the hill before it gets to the trench area. This gives a tremendous improvement to the people of that area because it reduces, I don't say it will relieve completely, but it will significantly reduce the flooding that they experience in that trench, the residential part of Trent. Now, you would remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, that USAID gave us tremendous assistance in doing water capture and improved drainage in the whole town area. Is it perfect? No. Has it helped? Yes. And I believe the member for St. James Central will be able to attest to that we've done the work there. We've tried to improve it. We did water capture above the hill, as well as we improved and enhanced the drainage. So that way is that we widened and deepened the drainage areas so that water could get out through that way, through the sea, without collecting in the whole town area. So all of this is part of the master plan that we have for whole town. Acquire, move the civic center, and then take that small area and redevelop it then to give another hotel investment. And at the end of the day, that's what foreign direct investment will do. It will give us growth, it will give us jobs, it will give us economic activity, it will give opportunities for our people, not only to be trained in culinary arts and in hospitality, but also to be able to use their talents and use their God-given abilities to be able to export and move to other areas as necessary. So I don't imagine that there could be any debate whatsoever about this. The Honourable Member clearly, and this is not a BLP-DLP divide, because I remember full well when the founder of the Democratic Labour Party started the Hilton Hotel, and he was absolutely clear that Barbados had to be developed through tourism, and he gave all sorts of concessions to the Hilton, and he didn't stop there. He then did the same thing at what was Holiday Inn, which is now the Radisson. So I could not imagine, recognizing that this is a complete development area. It is not agricultural land. It was never agricultural land. It is always now in a community plan to be developed, to move a police station from what is a danger zone into a protected zone, and then redevelop that area to redound to the benefit of the country, both in economic activity, in jobs, and to help us to be able to build out and grow this economy. So this is a win-win-win. I can't imagine I could see any objection or any divide on this whatsoever. And with those few words, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do ask that this resolution do now pass.
Honourable Member, Leader of the Opposition.
I'm obliged to you, ma'am. I suppose by a very comprehensive presentation, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West intends to teach the Honourable Member for St. George South how you introduce resolutions. And you tend to do it with some comprehensive attention to detail, and we are obliged to the Honourable Member for that lesson to his colleague. All that he were here to learn. But wherever he is, he might be crouching in his car listening. So I want to express indebtedness to the Honourable Member for Christchurch West for giving us all a lesson in what is before the House presently. But I have a few questions for him, through you, ma'am. And while he does not anticipate contentious debate,
Member.
Oh, okay.
Please.
You can continue, Honourable Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Yes, I was saying that while the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, in his seniority and maturity in this place, does not anticipate contentious debate, he would still want to answer a few questions so that the people of Barbados can receive assurances as to this transaction. And I would not accuse him of having disguised his language. I don't think he did. But perhaps it is my duty to further expand and to tell the people of Barbados that what is before us, it seems, is an arrangement by which the government is relocating its public offices, its civic center, on the land side of Highway 1, and new parties will locate themselves on the area presently occupied by the civic center. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West described that new occupation in the form of services, entertainment, and retail. There may be a few more, but those are the three that I caught in my notes. As I've said, a government that is transparent will now want to tell the people of Barbados a few greater details as to this arrangement. 7 hectares on the land side and leaving behind an area. I don't think I caught the area that is on the seaside, but that is not a criticism. The people of Barbados, though, would want to know, if possible, who is the new tenant on the seaside. The people would want to know whether that tenant is local or foreign. And that is important within the tourism industry, that there are implications when hotels are owned by non-nationals as opposed to nationals. That I believe it is the case that non-national ownership tends to have foreign exchange implications, which is to say that foreign ownership will have the right to repatriate its earnings or a part thereof. And that certainly always has foreign exchange implications for this economy, small and open as it is. So that if the government doesn't think that John Public is intruding on its private business, the government will have the opportunity to identify those parties so that this public transaction is not subject to any secret. And I've said it is a public transaction involving public lands, and therefore the public is entitled to know who are these figures, or who is this figure that will come into ownership of these lands. And if indeed, or let me put that differently, the public is entitled to know, and you're a lawyer, sir, what will be the nature of that occupation? Will that citizen be freehold or leasehold? And if it is leasehold, for how long? And if, of course, it is freehold, to whom is this freehold being given? To whom are the public lands of Barbados being alienated in the event of freehold purchase? For the layman who will own this land, and what, or who will hold this land, and what will be the terms of that occupation, leasehold or freehold. But being public lands, the public has a vested interest in knowing to whom these lands are alienated. I promised the honourable member further to his requests, and I do promise him again that this is not a contentious debate. This is a debate in which a parliament is coming to the people of this country and disclosing with candor on a matter of public interest. And I say interests, not only academic and political interests, but financial and economic interests. These are public lands. These lands are owned by the people of Barbados. So let me emphasize that the public needs to know at some point, if not today, the public is entitled to know to whom are we as Barbadians alienating these lands. And of course, in keeping with the gracious spirit of the honourable member who presented, if there's a price, that price will be disclosed. If it is a swap, the details of that swap will also be disclosed. Sorry. I made a promise to the honourable member for Christchurch West that this afternoon will not be a reflection of this morning. Please permit me to behave myself in that spirit. All right. And so we want to know the price. If money is passing, and the people of Barbados are about to benefit, if the Treasury is about to benefit, the people are entitled to know. The government must not engage in secret transactions. If it is a swap, certainly the beachfront land has higher market value than the landside land. And if it is a swap, certainly monies will be due to the government of Barbados, and by extension, the people of Barbados. So that in the event of a swap, the people of Barbados expect that this country, this treasury, will benefit financially. And if that is the case, and it most likely is the case, to what extent will the treasury benefit, since this government will want to say to the people of this country that this is not a secret arrangement? I don't want to use the word secret deal because that will take this debate into contention. My language will be mild so that we can be certain that this is not a secret arrangement. Please tell the people of Barbados whether our government, our people are benefiting financially, and more likely than not they will. By how much will they benefit? And as I said before, what will be the nature of the occupation of that lucky entity that will now come into possession of precious beachfront land? I think I've made that point sufficiently. Since the lands now fall into private hands, because we are not told that it is the government that's building the hotel and the entertainment area and the retail area, since it is more than likely a private interest, we are guessing, and the Honourable Minister will use his seniority, maturity, and experience to answer these questions. And he will therefore, the honourable member is therefore very keen to get up when I'm finished and give answers to these questions. But we were on to the question of beach access. Beach access tends to be unhindered when the property on the beach is owned by the government. there's certainly the example of Oistins. Nobody is shy about traversing through the police station and what used to be the library and the polyclinic. I know my constituency so well. Nobody is shy about traversing those premises and going on to the beach, and we do that. And we do that because there's not this fear factor that you're trespassing. You're on public property. And being public property, you feel that you have the right to traverse that public property and go on to Oistins Beach. It is somewhat different, though, Your Honor, when it is occupied by private interests. And when it is occupied by private interests tend to erect barricades. And even if they don't erect barricades, and even if they reserve a pathway, those pathways tend still to intimidate people because you're thinking you're on private property, which you are, and you are anticipating that some security personnel or some other person will ask you to give account for your walk onto the beach. So the question then is that general question related to beach access. Will the people of St. James still be able to guarantee access to the beach? And that's an important question. And we don't wish that to become a matter of controversy, public controversy, in a few years when this project is completed. Give to the people the assurances now. This is one case, a rare case, of a transfer of title to private interests in which the people may have the opportunity with an open government to plead with that government to guarantee public access to the beach, which they now have and which they feel that they have because they are not afraid to walk through a police station or to walk by licensing authority or the other place, BRA, or the library. There used to be a library there. I'm not sure if there's still one. So that I think we've made the point as to beach access, the guarantee of beach access, or will they find that this becomes another part of the West Coast in which the beach becomes an imaginary space? And I say imaginary because for much of the West Coast, you don't see the sand. We've lost that vista. We in Barbados have lost that vista. I was traveling to Spikeston on the old Leyland bus from the time I remembered myself. And it was a vista. In that drive from Black Rock, you walk down from Grisettes, you go to Black Rock, you catch the Leyland bus. And from the time the bus reached, I would say, just past Walmer Lodge, on that bus ride, a young child had a vista of white sand and the aquamarine waters of the West Coast. We've lost that. And we've lost that because the country, through its various governments, its successive governments, made a wise decision to invest in tourism. And let me seize this opportunity to say that tourism has done a lot for this country. Let me seize that opportunity. And Barbados has, I will demonstrate that by saying that Barbados has a different feel, a different rhythm during the months November to April. It is busy. And I'm trying to avoid the word a buzz. Because if I say a buzz, people may think I'm going back across. So, Your Honor, please let me avoid the word a buzz. But Barbados has a different rhythm. And were it not for the rampant violence, and I'm definitely not going back across now, were it not for the rampant violence, that rhythm would be preserved as a happy rhythm. But you have the taxi drivers and the ZM drivers. Well, I said taxi, ZR. The ZRs are now benefiting from tourism. The ZMs, the ZRs, the vendors, the beach people, the hoteliers, the restaurateurs. You go to lunch at a hotel during the season and you know that the season is on. You go out of season and that rhythm is absent. So I say that to say, Your Honor, that Barbadians have good reason to celebrate this tourism industry in which the government invested heavily from, I say, as far back as the 50s and the 60s. You speak to people in tourism and they will tell you that the glory days of tourism are perhaps not these days. There are people who have lived their entire lives on tourism, and their lives are satisfactory and fulfilled for having lived and worked in tourism, whether it is in the hotel directly or in tourism-related activities. But I was talking about rhythm, and I was talking about the wisdom of the investment in tourism, so that it reached the point, Your Honor, where this country was seen as a repository for skills in tourism, that people were coming here to learn how to do tourism. And so I've said all of that to say that nothing that I will say in here, past, present, or future, will contradict our position on tourism, that tourism has done a lot for this country, financially, morally, and socially. When I speak of morally, I'm talking about people's morale, people's spirit, the spirit of the season, November to April. I think I've made the point. And we certainly feel then that beach access continues to be a treasured right. Barbadians consider it a right, not a privilege. And there has always been that conflict between the citizen and the hotelier, particularly where that hotelier is foreign, where that hotelier is a foreign entity. And this is government's opportunity, having command of this project in advance of its construction, to secure certain guarantees on behalf of the people of Barbados, that beach access will be treated as a right and not a privilege, and that the retail areas and the restaurants will be open, and the pathways to the beach will not only be open, but they will be welcoming to the Barbadian. I had a little concern as to the reclassification from Zone 1 to Zone B. My very little understanding on the subject is that Zone 1 used to be restricted. I hope I'm right in saying that Zone 1 used to be an area where building was restricted, and the rezoning means that the rezoning to Zone B now means that you can have building. The honorable member who introduced this resolution today is a South Coast man, and flooding and drainage is not as critical an issue on the South Coast as it is on the West Coast. And the honorable member for St. Peter and St. James North and St. James Central will tell him that flooding continues to be a problem on the West Coast. And we all know what happened in 1984, apart from the that famous election, the outcome of which was not unrelated, I'm going to use litotes here, was not unrelated to a flood. Whole town is almost impassable with slight showers. Whole town really is a basin. And these building works are going to be conducted in that basin that functions as a catchment area for the more elevated areas of St. James. Your Honor, this is not something that the locals of St. James will take lightly. And there's always that thing called local knowledge. People see building works going on, and a little old man will come and say, boy, you do this at risk. You do this to the potential peril of Barbadians. It seems to be a fact of engineering life, and I would defer to the Honourable Member for St. George South that I know absolutely nothing about engineering. I am like the man who lives in St. James who will apprehend, with his lack of academic training, that building works and substantial building works seem always, and if not always, often to affect drainage. And I would like to caution the engineers. Of course, we're sure they've done their work. The Honourable Member, in a very comprehensive presentation lasting more than 2 minutes, did refer to the question of flooding. And he did say that while flooding cannot be prevented, it will be relieved. I take such good notes. And that is the kind of candor that will make this debate less than contentious. What a lesson, a good lesson this has been in frank presentation of a resolution. I know when the Honourable Member for St. George South hears this, he will enjoy it for what he has learned. And he will learn that even in a parliament, 2 minutes is not enough. May I continue, sir? That's not an unfamiliar complaint. I plead guilty.
I didn't want to interrupt because you had prefaced it, even in Parliament. Famous phrase. Very famous phrase, even in Parliament. Notwithstanding you're in Parliament. Well said. Well said, Honourable Member for
I'm obliged
yourself.
to you, sir. And so we learned that the offices on the other side of the road will become the new offices of the existing government offices, police, library, etc. My disappointment, and I will express this to the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, is that I don't think I heard mention of a community centre. And when I say community centre, we tend to, where I came from in Grisettes, a community centre was a place where you played cricket, football, and you went inside and played table tennis and the other tabletop games. In a modern age where local government ought to be a feature of our state institutions, a community centre gives opportunity for a local government assembly to meet. The citizens of St. James should have a meeting place such as exists at the Glebe St. George Civic Center. I was so pleased one night I did a town hall meeting there, and they had, right next to the police station was an area, a room where the citizens met. And I thought that did so much, certainly for police community relations, that people should feel that a police station is not a place of hostility between the public and police officers. And that does so much for social stability, a good relationship with the police, with the police service. So that I would urge the honorable member to reconsider his plans and to consider an area of community convention, not only for local government, but for churches. You find a lot of churches now, there are a lot of churches emerging in Barbados, and they are using public spaces. They're certainly in the school halls and other places of community convention. So I would urge, and this is easy to do, the honorable member for Christchurch West is a very good listener. And I'm sure he would amend and adjust those plans to include a community center. The honorable member went on to say to us that there are 6 hotels presently under construction, and he boasted about that. I criticized hotel construction a few weeks ago as not being as labor intensive as I had previously observed it so to have been in the past. The honorable member, in a reply, stated that a lot of the labor is employed off-site.
Or preparing the new site, at which point then there will be a sale of that site to the new owner. So that, Mr. Speaker, the parties at this point are the Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited, which obviously is a Barbadian company, and so the concerns articulated, I say articulated and not raised, because I do believe the honorable member did not seek to raise any alarm, but he did articulate a concern, which in the minds of those few who remain his faithful followers might be seen as an alarm. But the fact of the matter is that, But the fact of the matter is that the company in question is the Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited. And so this is not a matter about foreigners and foreign people and all of, you know, the usual bogeyman which is raised by the Democratic Labour Party when it is convenient to them to do so. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a useful thing because it lends a certain element of continuity to the expansion of Whole Town. And I must now be forgiven if I speak to my constituency, because Whole Town, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a mixed-use area. And it is in fact so described in the physical development plan. Very similar, Mr. Speaker, sir, to St. Lawrence Gap in the constituency of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. It hosts hotel accommodation, it hosts restaurant facilities, it has a certain element of commerce. Well, Whole Town has far more commerce, I think, or certainly a higher level of commercial activity than St. Lawrence Gap would. And equally, Mr. Speaker, by no means least, it is also a residential area. And what we have to do is to try to find a balance so that all of those interests can coexist happily and peacefully in a small space. And that is really, sir, one of the things that I want to speak to. Just down the road, in terms of the hotel development aspect of this, Discovery Bay, the old Discovery Bay, has been purchased by Blue Diamond, I believe, that hotel chain. That group, and a brand called Royalton Luxury is going to build a hotel there, and I think the investment is about, they have started, and the investment is around $320 million. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, in that last few sentences that I have spoken, I have spoken about a hotel investment that we are now talking about, just shy of $175 million, and another one which has already begun, $320 million. And I make that point in complete and unswerving support of the point made by the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, who so ably piloted this matter. And that is, sir, that this government has now presided over a fundamental turnaround in the fortunes of Barbados, and in particular, sir, the fortunes of the investment climate in this country. And that we are now seeing, sir, what is now is laid bare to the naked eye. The Leader of the Opposition who is charged with the responsibility of holding government's feet to the fire, spent the last 10, 15 minutes of his speech essentially lauding this government about that which he has seen happen with respect to that hotel, Indigo, in the constituency of Christchurch West. I don't think the records of this House have ever heard a leader of the opposition speak so glowingly about tourism investment in Barbados and the effort made by a government. And if he only knew a little bit more about St. James, he knows a little bit because he has come into the constituency of St. James Central with a gentleman whose name I would not call here to visit one or two people, and essentially mischief was created. I only say to them that when they go into people's communities, let it not any longer be said that clothing is missing off the clothes line. That is all I say to them. But, there should not be calls coming to me to ask me to get involved in matters at the police station and so on, asking about somebody's petticoat and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, so that is not the sort of thing that I came here for, and I hope that I would not have to endure that again. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we have a situation here where it is clearly unfolding that the investment climate in Barbados is rapidly improving, and that is a vote of confidence by the international community and the local community in what this country now has to offer. Now, the honourable member asked a question about beach access, and it is impossible to represent the parish of St. James, whether it be South Central or North, and for us not to be concerned about the question of beach access. And that has long been a painful issue for us on the West Coast, sir. And it was born out of some of the lack of foresight back in 1966 when this country became independent. And though the leadership then meant well and obviously has done a lot for Barbados, God bless, rest them in their graves, the truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, there was an element of short-sightedness as to how access on the beaches of the West Coast and how development on the beaches of the West Coast should take place in a manner that is equitable. And it is all too often that people speak glibly about this matter. You can drive down the West Coast, sir, and on the right hand, if you're heading towards Speightstown, on the right-hand side of the road, you are seeing an entirely different infrastructure than that which you are often treated to on the seaside of the road. Now, what we have managed to do during the course of the passing years is to ensure that there are beach accesses. Anybody who has heard me on this matter, or my colleague and friend, the Honourable Member for St. James North, would have heard us speak to the question of the need for us to constantly review and improve beach accesses. In many cases, they need to be widened. In many cases, they have been in need of repair. And indeed, during the life of this administration, the Honourable Member for Christchurch, was Adrian's constitution, West Central, had to come to my assistance with respect to fundamental repairs in one of the beach accesses in the Fitz Village area. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, this debate should not be used in a way to allow those that are innocent of the lay of the land to inadvertently mislead the public. The fact of the matter is that if you stand across the street at the bus stop facing the police station, you look at the police station and you look at a beach access to its virtual immediate left, and or to your left. And Mr. Speaker, so if you go through that beach access, you come to a little restaurant called Surfside. I don't know if the Honourable Member has ever, in his more private moments, dined there, but I invite him to experience the hospitality. And that restaurant is immediately behind the Old Town Police Station. So there's really sitting on the beach. So there is really and it is a beach that also has water sports operators immediately there present. So there's no difficulty and there's no issue whatsoever with the question of limited access. I personally have never seen anybody in a bikini or swimsuit walking through the back of the police station in order to get to the beach. I do not know where the honourable member gets that from. I think it is more a figment of his imagination than anything else. And for the obvious good reason that alongside the police station is the court. And I know you practice in those courts, sir. Indeed, as does the honourable member. And I'm therefore surprised that somewhere in his mind's eye, he is suggesting that he has seen or borne witness to people who, dressed as we are now, would be intermingling with those who are clad in their bikinis and putting on the suntan lotion, etc., to get to the beach. That is not something that happens to the best of my knowledge. I'm happy to guide the honourable member because I believe he means well. It is just that he is innocent of the lay of the land. So that, Mr. Speaker, sir, the question of beach access is a genuine one. But for these purposes, there is already a beach access which is used. And may I say, sir, that part of the plans about which I have been assured by my friend, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, is that there will be an enhancement of the beach access so that it will not only be largely by foot, but by vehicles. And large vehicles, so as to ensure that we can get the necessary heavy-duty equipment down onto the beach to assist in hauling up boats when there is a need to do that, and to protect the beach when there is a need to do that. And those are matters which the Ministry of the Environment also have a particular interest in. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Member also has spoken to the question of drainage ever so briefly. And I would like to speak to that a little bit more fulsomely. The member for Christchurch West, quite rightly in my view, pointed us to the 100-year flood line. We, sir, sometimes speak to these things very technically. This honourable member, back in 2005, came back from a visit to China at a time when we were having torrential rainfall in the parish of St. James and in other parts of the north of the island. And Mr. Speaker, sir, whole town was at that time inundated to the point where in some places it was utterly impassable. I, sir, with my own hands have gone into the police station to assist police officers at that same station put down sandbags in order to protect the station from being flooded out, because it is actually sitting at a point where it is slightly below sea level. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I speak therefore from an abundance of personal experience, having been there alongside those working in the station at the time, putting down sandbags and trying to ensure the protection. Equally, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a drain in Whole Town next to Lime Grove now, that if you look at it, sir, is probably about 6 feet wide. Back then, Mr. Speaker, sir, the width of that drain would have been perhaps the width of the chair, the throne in which you now sit. And yes, and it was widened, and it was is the word deepened? Yeah, well, the depth was increased. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, that type of investment in improving the flood pattern in Whole Town has been an ongoing one, and it is to my certain knowledge. Early in the life of this administration, the Ministry of the Environment was also party to an investment in Whole Town, where we did a lot of work in the wells and culverts and so on to improve them. But Mr. Speaker, sir, the truth is that this government has been laboring hard on this question of drainage. And it is true that uphill in the constituency of St. Thomas and in the constituency of St. Andrew, where some of the deluge begins, it is entirely possible, sir, for you to have a sunshine day in Whole Town, and then torrential waters come down almost out of nowhere, and you have flood events taking place. And that has affected, in particular, the floodplain near Trents, where the Honourable Member for St. James North represents. And this government's record, sir, I welcome the opportunity raised by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and I see it as in his mood of being very uncharacteristically courteous, a gift so that we can speak extensively to the hard work and the success of this government in improving the drainage level, not only in Old Town, sir, but also the work that we have done upstream in ensuring that check dams have been put in place and installed so as to solve some of the challenges which we've been confronted with. But there's a larger problem, and this proposed movement of the Civic Center speaks to it. Far too many times around Barbados, sir, the first responder, the people who we call on first in a time of crisis and need, are those who are located in the middle of the deepest risk. Now, if you listen carefully to what I said, Mr. Speaker, sir, just now, I was helping first responders by putting out sandbags so that they could not be flooded out and they'd be able to do their job. And if you inundate the police station and the officers have nothing to work with or no place to be, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, they can't effectively work as first responders. And that is true, and that has been true if we look at all of the installations we have tended to place around Barbados, sir. This is the era that began way back when we became independent. You have first responders, sir, who have had to face challenges in Old Town on the beach. First responders facing challenges in a floodplain in the area of the hospital, in this, right across the road there, sir, in this parish of St. Michael. In Oistins, Mr. Speaker, sir, the police station is on the beach. And if you go around Barbados, there are many instances where we have had that type of installation placed, questionably so in my view, on a beachfront. And the question therefore now becomes, is it not wiser and better and more prudent for us to relocate fundamental services to a place which is more inland and therefore more safe and enables them better to do the work that they have to do? I believe that we are now ticking that box and correcting a mistake that has been many, many years in the making. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to speak a little bit to the question of the tourism linkage, because I listened to the honourable member, and I am convinced that there's going to be a hard time in drafting a meaningful document that will convince the people of Barbados in 2 or 2.5 years' time when an election is called that there is a readiness on the part of that group that he leads. Mr. Speaker, sir, the truth of the matter is that when the honourable member speaks to tourism, he speaks almost with a bankruptcy to the developments which are confronting this country and to which we must respond. Now, Mr. Speaker, Speightstown is not something that we dream about or that we wish about. Speightstown is a lived reality. And in Speightstown today, there is a jetty which for the first time in the history of Barbados, let me repeat that again for the benefit of the Leader of the Opposition, for the first time in the history of Barbados, Speightstown is now seeing cruise ship landings at that jetty. And this opens up a whole new avenue of commercial opportunity, unprecedented. So you're arriving in the north and removing traffic from St. Michael, sir, and bringing it to human traffic and bringing that traffic to the north. Now, Mr. Speaker, so when you arrive in Speightstown, therefore, there must be a menu of options for the visitor to explore and to enjoy. And what are some of those options? Obviously, the inland tourism, the beauty of St. Lucie, the beauty of St. Peter, Mr. Speaker, sir, the heritage experiences and so on are there. But we must also recognize that one of the weaknesses that have confronted this country touristically is that we tend not to speak to spatial balance. You have at any given time 50, 60, 100,000 tourists on the island, but you've got them all bundled up into one small space. And you want spatial balance for 2 reasons. One, you don't want to have an over or an abuse of the natural environment which the country must hold there. And secondly, you want to spread the tourism dollar. And so therefore, sir, there is an inevitable nexus to be drawn between the investments that we are doing to make sure that Old Town is a commercially viable place alongside Bridgetown, or better than, that is my ambition, and the landings taking place in Speightstown. so that even as people may be inclined to go and see the vistas of Farley Hill and have their picnics or have whatever else the tourists may wish to do in those northern parishes, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are also some who got a heavy pocket and we may wish to offload some of that burden in Lime Grove and in other parts of Whole Town which are being developed as a result of the opportunities that we are now creating by removing the Civic Center and placing it more inland. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I understand the limitations of perspective and vision, and they say that where there is no vision, people perish, and we have seen since August of last year the perishing of that institution and its membership. But, Mr. Speaker, that must not be the woe that befalls Barbados. And I say, therefore, that I believe that, again, we tick another box when we talk about the opportunities for further development of our tourism product and the ancillary businesses. Because, again, you listen to the Honourable Member and you get the distinct impression that he sees tourism in the context only of a hotel. And it is really, sir, the people. It is, sir, the small and micro businessmen, the craft people, all of those components, sir, that are not ordinarily defined as tourism. They don't own a hotel, they ain't got no swimming pool at the property, and they're not blonde hair, blue-eyed in the traditional sense. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, what they are is living, breathing Barbadian citizens who are interested in earning an honest living and in advancing the commercial and economic well-being of the country. Now, if you're going to do all of that in Whole Town, sir, it follows as night must follow day, that you must have greater room for parking and accommodating the influx of people into Whole Town. You're going to have a widened BRA service. You're going to have a widened public library service, which is very important. You're going to have, Mr. Speaker, sir, the introduction of a civic center, the introduction of welfare facilities, Mr. Speaker, a post office, Mr. Speaker, and there must be a place for us to allow people to park and go about their business. The Honourable Member concedes that Whole Town is one of the most difficult places to find a park right now. And so therefore, it is a good and useful thing that as part of what we intend to do will be the high-rise parking that will come about right adjacent to the Civic Center, multi-story parking. And if I remember correctly from some of the meetings that I participated in, I think we are looking at somewhere in the vicinity of 500 or so vehicles. And again, Mr. Speaker, this is perhaps more of what we need to do. Because if we can usefully get the private sector to invest in that type of high-rise thing, then, Mr. Speaker, people have a place to park their vehicles and then take a ride into Bridgetown. And that takes some of the dense traffic off the streets. I yearn for the day when there is no traffic driving through Broad Street. And I believe that the Honourable Minister responsible for Public Works shares that vision as well. And you know, it is a sad and painful thing, sir, that the Democratic Labour Party does not speak to a future Barbados in anywhere near these terms, these tones. So they're content, I get the impression, that we should be sitting in lines of traffic all day long, hours and hours, watching the needle go down if you're driving a fossil fuel car. They have already, through this Honourable Member in this place, rejected the climate crisis, and therefore we feel along with that must equally have been rejected the need for us to have hybrids and electric vehicles and so on, because if you're going to poo-poo the fossil fuel crisis, you really don't, the climate crisis, you really don't have any foundation to go anywhere else. So by inference and logic, and if I am wrong, I'll be guided, but thus far all I have heard suggests that they are not going there. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, woe betide us. And what we are saying, sir, is that there must be more of these facilities where you can have park and ride and take some of the density of traffic out of Bridgetown. And let us therefore have a Bridgetown that is more environmentally friendly, and a Bridgetown that is more friendly to pedestrian traffic, and a Bridgetown that will therefore enable us to have where we should have gone a long time ago, where you have your cafes and you have some of your entertainers in the city, as you see in Ottawa, for example, performing live, getting an extra dollar in their pocket, interfacing with the tourism community. Mr. Speaker, sir, bringing alive a city that, if we are not careful, will die before our very eyes. And that is the challenge, sir, that is confronting this country, but about which, unfortunately, our colleagues on the other side of this House remain definitely silent. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the other value added to this project is that it is going to be accompanied by the completion of the boardwalk in Old Town. And if you know anything about Old Town, sir, you know that much as with the South Coast, they began the process of a boardwalk. It is broken. When I say broken, it is unfinished. So you have one part of it, and then you have a break in it, and then it continues a little further down. And what the intention is, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to have a holistic thing. And that serves the dual purpose of, again, protecting the coastal infrastructure. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, sir, enabling locals first and visitors by extension to have an opportunity to get some walking or running exercise right next to the sea. I feel, and I say this with regard to the South Coast as well, we must now seriously look at electrification of the boardwalks so that they are lit better at night and are made safer at night. I see the boardwalk on the South Coast, and I see families walking there at night. But equally, we have known, yes, turtle safe lighting. But equally, we have known, sir, that there have been criminal incidents which have taken place on that boardwalk, which could be avoided if we have better lighting, and as the honourable member makes the point, turtle-safe lighting, because we at all stages have to be environmentally conscious and friendly. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor the point. I think that there are a number of very good reasons why we are here today, and it certainly is a pleasure for me to speak on matters relating to the development of my constituency. I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I fervently hope that I have answered all of the questions raised by the honourable member with respect to the size of the investment, the size of the land, who are the parties behind the investment, the question, Mr. Speaker, sir, the mischievous question of beach access, and all of those things that were raised, sir, so that there should be no misinterpretation about government's good intention. Before I sit, sir, I ask the honourable member who has awoken from his slumber just to signal to me if there is a question that I have not answered. And he signals, sir, in the negative that there is no question not answered. And so with those few words and with his blessing, I thank you, sir, for your indulgence.
Honourable member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution, which relates to land in my constituency of St. James North. As has been agreed on both sides of the political divide here today, the Civic Centre, as presently located in Old Town, St. James Central, just south of the border of my constituency, is now a bit outdated. It is difficult in terms of parking, as you would know, Mr. Speaker, when you go to the Magistrates Court at Old Town there, in terms of finding parking as an attorney at law, with limited parking, where you have, of course, a magistrate's court, you have a marshal's court, you have a BRA office, Barbados Revenue Authority, post office, police station, library. It's difficult. And over a period of time, I believe that center was opened, I think the plaque says 1991, by the then Deputy Prime Minister, Philip Graves, who is still alive, sir. And it's time to get a new civic center. The decision has been taken by the cabinet to move it slightly north into my constituency, just on the border there, the opposite side of St. James Central. 18.5 acres, which is an expansive area. Moving a civic center there would, of course, give the opportunity for expansion later on if the initial intention is only to remove those particular departments which are presently housed in Old Town. But certainly it will give space, physical space, for in the future having, for example, a fire station there, since there's presently no fire station in the northern part of the island, north of the one in Arch Hall, St. Thomas. The one at Weston having been ignominiously closed by the last Democratic Labour Party government in May 2017, without even informing me, Mr. Speaker, as Member of Parliament. That is how the Democratic Labour Party operates. They didn't even have the courtesy, the then Attorney General or Minister of Home Affairs or any other one in that administration to inform the Member of Parliament, sir. And I mean, they didn't have to like me, which they didn't, but at least you respect the office. So they didn't inform me, nor did they inform the people in Weston. I happened to go there Saturday because rumors had been floating about for 6 months that the DLP was going to close the Western fire station. And happened to go there one Saturday, and I said, look, this rumor, I'm hearing this too often. Let me go across the road and ask the firemen. And they told me, Mr. Dixon, boy, don't tell nobody, but they tell us to move everything by Thursday next week, yeah. They're closing the fire station. May 2017, almost, 8 years ago. So relocating the civic center to this area will give this government or a future government the opportunity to place a fire station there, for example, a polyclinic as well. And other services, social services, because the closest polyclinic as well is in St. Peter, Morris Bayer, just across again from the northern part of my constituency. So this is a good idea which I support, sir. It will certainly be of economic benefit to St. James North, the people of St. James North, and the people of the North in general, because presumably and assumably, people in St. James North will get jobs in terms of the construction of the buildings there. And I want to join with most recent calls have been by Senior Minister, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, as he implores the people of Barbados, and in my case, the people certainly of St. James North, as I do very, very often, sir, in private conversations with them, to get involved and participate in Construction Gateway Initiative, the projects, in the National Transformation Initiatives, and gain practical knowledge in trades, in construction. It is decent living, it is honest living, and I've said publicly, sir, on many occasions, that it can't be a situation where contractors are forced, as they say, to import persons from outside of CARICOM, sir. I mean, CARICOM is fine. We're one region, we're one unit. But outside of CARICOM now, and some people who perhaps are not even fluent in English, in the English conversation, because we have jobs here, sir, that ought to be taken by Barbadian residents and at the furthest CARICOM citizens, sir. And I privately, as I said, important and converse with my constituents who call me and ask me about government jobs. Look, we need to take advantage of the multiplicity of programs, training and vocational programs that this government has brought, especially in the last 3 years, since re-election and since COVID has ended, and to make available to the citizens of this country to be trained in construction works, plumbing, electrical, masonry, labor, carpentry, roof installation, well digging, the whole gamut. And really and truly, I join with Senior Minister, Member of Parliament, Christchurch West, from this position on the floor of Parliament, urging the people of Barbados, particularly people in St. James, there's a St. James project, to take advantage of these programs which this government has given to the people of Barbados. The issue of flooding has come up, has been raised by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. So, and I'm aware the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Public Works, when she intervenes in this debate, will speak towards the consultancy which has been ongoing on the area of Trent to alleviate the flooding in that area. And so I will give a history of Trent over the last 40 years. For the benefit too of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who is not a St. James man. Trent was named as one of the plantation tenantries in the socially transformative Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act of 1980, which just last week, Tuesday, sir, you would recall that I named, when I listed the pieces of legislation which I thought were among the most socially transformative pieces of legislation in this country since the advent of adult suffrage. And I added the Rights of Disabilities Bill, which we debated last week, Tuesday, in this Parliament, and which the Senate debated 2 days ago, to that list. Utterly socially transformative act, which I believe the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would agree with me, because he was with us, he was with us on 2 previous occasions, as being one of the transformative pieces of legislation in this country. Trent was one of those areas named. So the residents of Trent were able to purchase those lots on which they reside, household lots, at $1 a square foot. So, and the physical fact is that that area is below the table plate. In a lot of areas, it floods tremendously. This is not a problem that has now come about, so, or is a problem created by this government. So it's been so for the last, 60-odd years? But of course, a bit intensified within recent years because of climate change and all that has been going on. So, and there's nobody of any right mind who can dispute the effects of climate change on Barbados, and specifically on the coastal areas along the west coast, with rain, as the Honourable Member for St. James Central said, coming from the Midlands, flowing down to the west coast, Trent's whole town included. And the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister has assured that the consultancy study which was undertaken by her ministry is about ready, and it also takes into account this new development which will come about, that we're speaking in this resolution to. And it will be of benefit, therefore, to those residents of Trent who will live or who live just below where this infrastructural project is contemplated. So that alone, sir, is a tremendous plus for the people of Trent. Because we recall, for example, when we had our first parish speech in St. James in September 2022, they had tremendous rainfall that day, tremendous rainfall. We still had about 140 people or 150 people coming out, which was a great credit to the people of St. James North, but only one person could come from Trent because Trent was waterlogged, as it always is, with 5 minutes of heavy rainfall, and only one person could get out of the house. So this alone will be a credit, this development alone, with its consultancy study and with the certainty that drainage issues, flooding issues in Trent will be rectified to some degree, sir. I mean, time will tell to the extent of the degree, but certainly alleviated is certainly a plus in terms of this development. The issue of beach access has been also raised in this debate by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and the Honourable Senior Minister for St. James Central has spoken to it, and I certainly want to assure the public, especially the people of St. James North and people in wider St. James, that this is an issue, again, that has been a challenge and been an issue in Barbados for last 60 years. The Honourable Member of Parliament for the St. James Central took us back to the 1960s, mid-1960s, when the then Democratic Labour Party government created, of course, luxurious communities in St. James. And it was a DLP government, sir, that did that, not a BLP government. But be that as may, we're not talking ancient history. We've got to deal with the problems now. And certainly it's an issue that we've been on top of. It was raised at the last St. James Parish speech in September, and the Honourable Member for St. James Central and I addressed the issue and informed the public, and I lay it here in Parliament, sir, that we had had a meeting just, I think it was a week before, or a couple of weeks before that St. James Parish speech, meeting by Zoom led by Honourable Senior Minister who introduced this resolution. And the then acting Minister for the NCC was there, and the NCC and permanent secretaries to speak on this issue of beach access. And I believe that a report is being updated on beach access along the West Coast, because I certainly, the whole country? Okay. Because I certainly put forward the suggestion that along the West Coast, certainly in St. James North, there should be no beach accesses which are more than approximately 100 meters apart. I felt was a reasonable figure. So I believe it would be useful for the Honourable Senior Minister or the Minister in charge of the NCC, when that report is updated, to make it public to the people, because it's an issue. It's definitely an issue. And we have to face it. We can't deny it. I mean, the Mighty Gabby's song, "The Beach Is Mine," made, over 40 years ago, is as pertinent today and receives as much upon today as it did when it was made over 40 years ago. So, and of course, you know, the beach has to be part of the patrimony of the people of Barbados. Beach access, therefore, is of prime importance. The issue, sir, of flooding, Fortston. Fortston, of course, is close to this area. It is a national park. Don't mind, it is in the constituency of St. James North. And I would hope that opportunity would be taken as well to upgrade Fortston in terms of the playing facilities, the play park, the tennis courts, because Fortston, of course, is a prime recreational facility for Barbadians, especially on a weekend and on bank holidays. So, sir, I'm not going to be long. I normally, as you know, utilize all my minutes when I speak, but I think that I have covered everything I wanted to say in support of this resolution, and looking forward to the economic benefits, not least employment benefits for the people of St. James North when this project gets underway. I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise briefly to just intervene in relation to the compulsory acquisition of these lands for the Civic Centre at the Old Town site. And I do so more so to support the presentation which has been made earlier on this side in relation, on all of the speakers rather, that have supported this particular development on the west coast of the island. I would have heard the Honourable Leader of the Opposition speak earlier in relation to concerns expressed specifically to flooding in the Trent area. And it is a known fact that we have had some challenges over the years. The last speaker who rose would have indicated that this has been going on for quite some time. I believe the Honourable Leader of the Opposition tried to express concern regarding whether there may potentially be more flooding in this particular area as a result of this development. And I think, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to perhaps just put this in context so that, again, as we've seen for the course of this morning, that things are not taken out of context and that we do not create alarm in the public domain, and in particular the people in the Trents area who may be concerned about whether this particular development is in any way going to impact them in a negative way as it relates to flooding. So as we've heard earlier, the challenge has been, from a technical standpoint, there have been several interventions that have been done seeking to be able to alleviate flooding in the Trents area. And so I want to give the assurance that in taking into account this particular civic center, which I think we all agree is necessary, because having, on several of our coasts, having very prime property being utilized in this way, particularly when you're now trying to think out development of the country in a different way, it is important to be able to plan development as opposed to being very ad hoc in the way that we have in the past been able to look at development. And so when these parcels of lands are being looked at and the development of this site is being looked at for the Civic Center, one of the things that has to be considered is obviously the issue of drainage and the drainage impact on that particular site. But it also goes wider, because the site is also going to impact, as it will be impacted as well by other areas within the Trents location. And the Ministry of Transport and Works, through the drainage unit, has engaged engineers to be able to look at flood mitigation measures in that area. Now, fortunately for us, the team that has been engaged to be able to look at the overall issues of flooding in that area, in the Trents area, is also working on the actual project for the Civic Center. So it has actually made life a little bit easier, because while they are designing for that site, they also have to take into account the impact that, the problems that have been plaguing us for many years in the Trents area, that we want to bring a resolution to it. Now, the ministry has tried over the years. There have been several interventions to be able to get this right in Trents. I remember when I was Minister of Education, There were videos of school children wading through water, cars making it, the road was impassable because of the level of flooding that we've seen, particularly as a result of climate change in recent years. And it was clear that we had to do something rather than constantly just saying we have to pump water every time that flooding arises. All of the representatives in the St. James area, I can tell you, have been constantly calling, not only myself, but the Honourable Member for St. Andrew in relation to issues of flooding in that area. And we therefore wanted to take a holistic approach as it relates to solving the problem of flooding in the Trents area. I can tell you as well that this has come up on many occasions in relation to Paris Speaks. And the truth of the matter is Paris Speaks gave us an opportunity to really put in perspective the impact that a lot of these issues are having on people within communities. Real people experiencing real things, bringing them to our attention. It may have been arduous at the most part in terms of us having to deal with the criticisms and the tempers flaring from time to time. But the truth of the matter is that these types of issues impact people in a real way. And I'm certainly happy to say that we have been able to wrestle to the ground the Trents area and to have those flood engineering studies started. We are at the preliminary stage. We're now moving to the actual design stage. And I'm hopeful that within the next couple of weeks that we will be in a position to now move to the construction stage where we can actually put out to tender those designs and incorporate those designs into the wider Trents location. But all of this, Mr. Speaker, is against a background that this administration has come to office, and we have had a number of areas across this country that have been plaguing people for a very long time in relation to flood mitigation. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition will be well aware as well that we've had some challenges in the Goodland Gardens area. I can't say that having been the Minister for the last few years that I've ever once heard him mention those areas in Goodland Gardens in his constituency in Christchurch South. The now current representative has been raising it with me on a regular basis. But the good news as well for him, and he would want to pay a note to this, is that we have also put out for the engineering designs to be done in the Goodland Gardens area, because I think from the time I was a little child, that development was a problem to both administrations. And we have decided, enough is enough. We need to bring an end to the issues that are facing people in those communities. And again, those designs, again, are at a very advanced stage, and we're hopeful that we can move to getting some relief, perhaps even before the beginning of the next rainy season. The works have been divided into about 7 areas that we have targeted. So the contractor that is working on the Trents area is also working on the wider Dover Christchurch area. And I think it is fair to say that while we're speaking about whole town, the reality is that Dover and the other areas around St. Lawrence Gap as well are also of concern in terms of continuous flooding. Whenever we have heavy rains, it's in a tourist area. It's also in a residential area for locals. And we have prioritized those areas, both Dover and the St. Lawrence area, to ensure that we can bring relief to a number of the concerns that have been raised. We also have looked at Wilcox, the Goodland Garden area, as I said. This is under the other contract. Pillersdorf, Martindale's Road, and Ashdean in St. Michael. And I'm expecting that those designs will be ready by the end of this month. So we're moving along to be able to put things in place, particularly when we have projects of this nature, to accelerate the work that has to be done so that there is, it eliminates the cause for concern that people have as to these new developments going in and how it is going to impact their lives. So just wanted to give the assurance that that is the approach that the ministry has indeed been taking. But on a wider issue, obviously the level of investment that is likely to be made from this particular beachfront property is pretty significant, and it will allow us obviously to be able to do a lot of other things in terms of social welfare programs that we need to do, but also to improve our towns. And when you look at the physical development plan, it speaks very heavily to us being able to develop our town centers. Anybody who has the opportunity to travel will appreciate that the development of city centers is, a major area for investment in other jurisdictions. And whether it is Oistins, whether it is in Bridgetown, whether it is in Holtown or Speightstown, that similarly is the thrust of this administration, to see development in those city areas, in those hubs, in a different way. The truth of the matter is that we've come along and we have pretty much had to work with what exists. We have not had the opportunity to really plan our development. And I think that is the challenge sometimes when people say they want a road in this area or they want us to construct certain things in specific areas, they often do not appreciate what we have to do in order to relocate residents, to widen a road. We may have to move people out to be able to construct a particular facility. We do not have the luxury sometimes of being able to plan development the way that we would like. But a project like this allows us to be able to plan development in a completely different way than we are accustomed to. And if you take, for instance, what is happening at the current center in Holtown, you have the Barbados Revenue Authority, you have licensing authority in that space. Obviously, licensing authority falls directly under my portfolio. So I'm well aware of the issues that the average person having to interface with those two agencies have to go through on a day-to-day basis. A few weeks ago, we visited the site. We recognized that with licensing on one end of the building, fitted into the space that was available, of course. And on the other side, you have Barbados Revenue Authority fitted into another space that was available. That the person who is trying to use the service, especially if they are elderly, they have a very difficult time. Yes, Member for St. Thomas, it is confusing at times. And while we've tried to put persons in place to direct people, the reality is that with the opportunity now to have a civic center in the Trents area that allows us to properly plan with the various agencies, we are in a better position to be able to plan the development of those spaces to make it more user-friendly for the public. We went down there and we looked at whether we could in any way knock out walls and open up spaces to be able to allow more free-flowing traffic. But the reality is that the space does not permit us to do so. The requirements of the Barbados Revenue Authority in relation to protecting the country's money does not allow us to do certain things that we would like to do. But what has since happened is that as we look to develop the Civic Center, both BRA and Licensing Authority have had the opportunity to be able to share their perspectives as to the flow of traffic within a newly improved space, how the two entities will coexist, how we can make it easier and simpler for Barbadians to be able to traverse those entities, to be able to ease the frustration that we get on a day-to-day basis. I can tell you that even coming out of that visit at the Holtown facility, the present facility, one of the things that we looked at in the Pine was whether we could make the Pine also more simplified in terms of the use of people gaining access to the facility. And I'm pleased to say that coming out of those visits, we are actually in the process right now of doing some renovations to the space, which we shared with the Barbados Revenue Authority at the Pine location. And why, Mr. Speaker? Because again, we have fitted entities into existing spaces without taking into account all that is in the physical development plan, without taking into account the flow of traffic and the frustration that sometimes is caused to ordinary people having to use these facilities. And if it is that we are going to utilize a central location like the Pine, then it means that we have to take into account the constant concerns that the public has as it relates to using the premises. So we already have access for people with disabilities, but we want to make it a bit easier for people to move from one function over at the licensing authority and be able to have cashier windows belonging to BRA within the same space so that those services can very smoothly be offered to the general public. It is those types of things, Mr. Speaker, that the planning development as we see it right now is very important. And I am certainly happy that we are in a position to be able to plan in this way. At the other civic centers that we've been able to create, we've seen the benefit. I know as a practicing lawyer, I too wondered over the years why is that Oistins was on the police station was on the sea and the courts were on the sea. And similarly in Oistin, in Holtown as well, a similar thing obtains. You've taken prime property, and because obviously of our colonial history, we have been laden with these spaces, which now we have to reimagine a different Barbados. Now, I know the other side has most difficulty trying to reimagine a different Barbados. They are still cutting blades of grass with Collins, and they are not thinking of, advanced technology to be able to allow people to sustain themselves in agriculture. I know that they have serious difficulty moving from 1966 to where we are today. But we have moved past a lot of what people may hold dear, and we appreciate that we live in a world where we are trying to punch above our weight. We are expected to be global leaders, and those are the things that are important for us to be able to do. Now, I couldn't speak to the issue of Trents and flooding without speaking to wider issues in terms of the new approach of MTW in relation to flooding. We've had a number of residents, in some cases, sending us petitions indicating that they have concerns about flooding in other areas, not just in Ho Tong. In Woodburn, for instance, and I must take the opportunity to mention this because the residents came together. They were able to engage the services, whether, I'm not sure whether free or otherwise, but they engage the services of an engineer to be able to submit a report to the Ministry of Transport and Works Drainage Division with a view to being able to make recommendations to us about what they felt we could do in relation to solving the problems of drainage in their community. The residents took it on themselves, Mr. Speaker. I want to make it clear. Because of the problems that we've had over the years where for one reason or the other we've tried to do short-term solutions but we have not been able to address them sufficiently to solve the problems, I took the decision that if the residents have taken it upon themselves to be able to raise the issue of flooding in that way and take action for themselves, that the ministry owes it to the residents of Woodburn to be able to review what is proposed and to consider whether the options being proposed by the engineer made sense. Because the time that it may take for the ministry to now have to go to tender to engage somebody to propose recommendations may take so long that we will be in another hurricane season and we have the same problems all over again. I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, today to say that based on the representations made by the people in the Woodburn area, supported by the representative of the area, we have been in a position to have the ministry review those recommendations that were proposed and agree to short, medium-term, and long-term measures. We've got everything costed. We support, for the most part, what was being proposed because it aligns with what the ministry would have wanted to do. And we are in a position in the next financial year to address some of those issues. You also have areas like Atlantic Park. And the Honourable Member, who is the representative, is Philip, he would tell you that this has been a conversation that we have on a regular basis about the Atlantic Park area. Now, the reality is that we have a number of developments in this country where planning permission would have been granted, like the same Goodland Gardens. And what has happened is that after the permission has been granted, perhaps there are certain conditions that should have been applied or that should have been met within the conditions. But the development is built out. Issues arise years later in relation to flooding. And of course, everybody turns to the government of Barbados to be able to solve those issues. So Goodland Gardens, as well as Atlantic Park, and there are a couple of others, are in that category of development, not necessarily built up by the Barbados government, but facilitated in terms of planning permission being granted, where we have seen an increase in the number of complaints, particularly with the recent heavy rains, where we are finding ourselves in a situation where we constantly have to be pumping water, which is going into people's homes. Again, the Goodland Gardens area is already covered in terms of the current studies that are being done for the engineering designs, but also the Atlantic Park, we've pulled that out as well. And we are looking at that in terms of some medium-term measures, but also long-term measures to be able to do it. And I want to make it clear that we can't get designs done on everything all at the same time. But what we are starting to do is to be more clinical in the approach to addressing the issue of drainage. We've had concerns expressed in the Scarborough area. Again, that would be familiar to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition if he visited the area regularly. I can't say, but I know that representations are being made, certainly by the current member who has been duly elected by the people to represent them in that constituency for this administration. It means, therefore, that our approach is changing, and we've seen what happened with Murphy Pasture. We spent significant sums to be able to address the issues there. We have teams in those areas, contract workers who are constantly cleaning those areas to make sure that we improve the conditions for people in low-lying areas. And those works, we've just extended those contracts to be able to allow that work to continue. And why, Mr. Speaker? Because we can't be saying in the one breath that we have a problem with flooding, but not increasing the number of persons who clean the drains to ensure that we reduce and we mitigate the flooding. So whereas the approach previously was that we would only employ persons for a few months just before the hurricane season, our approach is now twofold. We've increased the number of contract workers to clean the drains across the country, but we have also engaged the persons on the highway beautification program recently to also, as they are cleaning the highway and landscaping, to ensure that they're also cleaning out the drains and removing the debris. It is a different approach for the Ministry of Public Works, but it is one thus far that has been met with a certain level of success because it has allowed the MTW to be able to better get a handle on its core areas while at the same time supervising other areas across the country that are desirous of having that type of cleaning. So I just wanted to share, Mr. Speaker, with you, not just in support of this particular resolution, but also a wider context of drainage, because I would not want it to be felt by the public that in any way that their recommendations in relation to solutions for drainage are not being listened to or considered. I wouldn't want them to think, as was being alleged earlier, that in any way that this Trent's development was not taking into account the problems and the challenges that we've been seeing in the surrounding Trent's area, but rather to give the assurance that the approach, certainly with me as minister, is a more holistic approach to being able to deal with the issues of drainage across this country. And therefore, I look forward to this particular facility being built out for us being able to keep the drains and the roads clear of debris, and a reminder to the public, certainly, that they have their part as well when it comes to the issue of flooding, because when you look at it, a lot of the times when we take things out of the drains, it is plastic bottles, it is plastic containers, it is things that people throw through the car window. It is things that, when we do the jetting, we find all kinds of things, from animals to cloth to all kinds of things that should not be disposed of in the way that they're being disposed of. So I give the assurance we are doing our part in MTW with the resources that we have to make sure that the drainage issues are addressed systematically across the country. And as soon as we're in a position to have those designs done, for the 7 projects certainly that we have on stream for this financial year, we will immediately start the construction of those works, and we will move on to the next set of flood-prone areas that are on our list in order of priority to be able to address those. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I support the resolution and I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I now choose to wrap up this debate, I will also touch on some of the questions that the member for Christchurch South raised. But first, as customary, let me thank all those members who spoke in support of the resolution. And obviously, based on the support on both sides, obviously the resolution will carry. The first thing the member spoke about was beach access, and it was also spoken about by the member for St. James and North. And I want to go further and say, in the past, as the Honourable Member for St. James Central said, a lot of vehicular access was just pedestrian. But now, because we are seeing that vehicular access is very, very important, even as it relates to then being able to do further works on beach protection and coastal protection, that we're requiring vehicular access, which means it has to be even wider access, and that will be part of any further planning permissions. Interestingly enough, there's another hotel development that is before planning now that I didn't even mention in the constituency of Christchurch South, actually. And they also will have a requirement for, it's 180 rooms. It's on what was the former, you would remember, Banana Boat. Also the garage was there in Maxwell Coast Road. And that would be another hotel development that will, and the requirement will be that they must have vehicular access to that beach, so that that beach will be protected and give an opportunity for people to use that. So yes, beach access is a definite requirement, and now we're requiring vehicular access to the beach. The other matter that the honourable member raised had to do with the economic aspects of the transaction. The honourable member for St. James Central spoke about it, but I want to go further. As we said, the estimated cost for the new civic center will be in the $40 million range. Okay, and that's what we anticipate that it will cost. However, the development, once it's completed, when they build the 80-room hotel, we expect that to be a $172 million investment. So if you add the $172 million of the hotel and the $40 million of the new civic center, you're in the region of 210, 250 million all told. And the honourable member also asked a question about number of people that will be employed, and I reached out to get an indication. And during construction of the civic center, there will be 150 people during construction of the civic center. During construction of the hotel, 300 people, and then 100 to 150 people in operation after the hotel is built. And while I was at it, I also got information about Indigo. Indigo jobs is 250 people during construction and 100 people after construction. But the big one, Mr. Speaker, is Royalton. Royalton anticipates 700 people in construction. It's the largest of the lot, and 500 people will be employed post-construction. So lots of opportunities for people to work, lots of opportunities for people in construction. The honourable member also asked about zone changes, and this was done some time ago, piloted by the member for St. Michael Southeast, when we changed the zoning across Barbados. And and the greatest beneficiary actually of the zone changes, where zones move out of zone 1 and into zone B, which means development is available, is actually in St. James North. And that's one of the greater areas of beneficiaries. But it enabled, I believe it was 2,500 acres that were not be able to build on before, have now become buildable. And what basically the zone changes was, in the early days of the Water Authority, the zones were based on the time of travel of a bacteria. And that's how we assess the zones. Now, this zone now is based on the time of travel of nitrates, and for nitrates to disintegrate. So that allowed a contraction of the zone 1 and then into the new zone A, zone B, zone C. And there are certain restrictions as it relates to how you handle waste when you go into those particular zones. And this area benefits from that. The honourable member also spoke about the requirement of a community center. So that brought me then to this document. And this is a spatial representation of what we anticipate the facility to be. So basically, if we're looking if the school is behind you and you're looking into the facility, this front part area here is actually still in zone A. And what that will become the floodplain. So as the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast spoke, we did a floodplain in Murphy's pasture. And what that does is that protects the houses. So you make a depression or a sinkhole, if you will, that takes the water as it comes down, it captures it there, and then it protects the buildings thereabout. We did it at Murphy's pasture. It was the first time we did it. Then we did it at Cherry Tree Circle in Watton. That was able to protect the Watton area, and then we'll be doing it here. And the same thing that we're looking to do as well in the Goodland area. You provide what was called a floodplain. The water collects in there. It moves off fast, collects in there, seeps into the ground, but the most important thing is the houses are protected. So we have the police station and the courts on this side, and interestingly enough, what the police have asked for and we have agreed, this is the in and out down the middle, But however, there's an emergency exit down the side here as well, should there be any airfield blocking, which is important to be on the side of the police and the courts. On the other side of the development, where we have the post office, Barbados Revenue Authority, Licensing Authority, welfare and library, and then this is the important structure here, which is the multi-story car park facility, as well as car parking all around here. But this one is where we anticipate to have 500 cars. No, we're actually going up to RFP to build this. And behind now is what is there as well for further development for things like the community center that the honorable member spoke about. So it is a comprehensive plan that we have for the whole area to develop and raise up this area. Also, I want you to note we also have a serpentine walkway coming along this area so that when people park in the high-rise car park, they can just journey along the serpentine walkway to then walk into Old Town and enjoy the benefits of Old Town and 1st and 2nd Street and all those areas for the nightlife. And we anticipate that by having this infrastructure built and better parking, 1st and 2nd Street and Lime Grove and all those places will be able to benefit from this, as well as the people at Royalton. Because you have to understand that Royalton will have restaurants associated with it, and people will want to dine at Royalton, and there will be a valet parking facility together with a mall associated with Royalton on the other side to be able to develop this whole area. So it is a tremendous development. We anticipate that all of this put together will be able to enhance and improve Old Town, and by extension, develop that whole area, St. James North, St. James South, St. James Central, and by extension, the whole of Barbados can benefit from a high-end civic center and then all the knock-ons that come from there. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that we've pretty much put everything on the table. There are no questions, no contention. I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This resolution is now passed.
Order number 14, sir. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the House, to move the passing of a resolution that the Honourable the House of Assembly concur in the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill 2025.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give notice of a resolution.
I give notice already.
Oh, give notice?
I give notice already. We
Pass on.
pass resolution.
This is the way to pass.
I beg to move the passing of a resolution that the Honourable the House of Assembly concur in the amendments made by the Honourable the Senate to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill 2025.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting, and I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until Tuesday, the 28th of January at 10 a.m.
Question is that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 28th day of January 2025 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 28th day of January 2025 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.